All right, boys, how was your weekend then?
Not the best. I've had better weekends, to be honest with you.
It was
You?
great. I dressed my child up as a pumpkin by putting her in an actual pumpkin.
Fair enough. So joining us this evening as well, Iestyn, did you manage to have a good weekend?
Well, the other three quarterfinals were enjoyable, but yeah, other than that, well, we can continue where we are. Bring on the URC, I say.
Absolutely. So the best thing about this weekend just gone is ignore the Welsh game and just listen to all the Irish podcasts and all the Irish supporters going absolutely apeshit about the fact that they should be in the final by rights because they're number one in the world and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was a bit of a shit weekend, but we're not going to let it get to us because, like I say, you've got a lot of URC stuff to come. So let's start as we normally do with a drink of the week. So Harley, what have you got for us in drink of the week this week, my friend?
Well, knowing one of the guests isn't necessarily a drinker, so I thought I'd carry you an extra one for the team. So I'm starting off with a Devon Ridge dry cider, which is very nice. My wife bought for me as a celebration for me getting a new job starting in the new year. And then when we start talking about the Wales game, I've gone something a little bit heavier, which is Fox Denton Dark Lantern rum, which isn't just nice vanilla spiced rum, similar to Kraken, just a bit more bougie because I'm middle class now.
What's the percentage on the rum? 40, 45?
It's actually quite a tame one. It's a 31.
Oh, it's not so bad.
I think because I'm not too distressed about the Wales result. Otherwise, I'd be breaking out the Navy strength ones.
Cool. Okay, so Iestyn, what have you got this evening? Now you're renowned for not being a rampant alcoholic like the rest of us. That comes with age, my friend, and you're far too young to be drinking on a Monday night. So what have you got, mate?
Yes, I'm on the Dr. Pepper, so that will be me sorted for the evening, and yeah.
Jamie was very concerned before we started that it's a full fat one, not a low sugar one, and absolutely definitely it's.
I immediately asked. I wasn't concerned. I just wondered. That's all. If he wants to drink full fat, that's absolutely fine. But the zero is better, in my
Let the
humble
man have a
opinion.
vice.
I'll keep it up for debate, but I'm happy either way.
Jamie, mate, what have you got?
Well, I got something different for this week. I've got a beer for the Namibia.
Really?
Windhoek Lager. Yeah. Windhoek Lager. So nice? I got this from, it is very nice. It's only 4%. It's not strong at all. I got this from the Savannah shop in London. So they sell South African food and drinks. Yeah, so I picked it up from there. I have got a couple of other South African lagers that I'm going to bring onto the pod in due course. But tonight I went with a beer from Namibia. And yeah, it's very, very nice. Windhoek Lager.
Excellent. It's good to have something a bit different.
Yeah.
Well, I got something from the same place that I've got from the last 3 weeks, from the Little Groat Brewery, because they had a special on at the food fair thing. So this one's called The Legend of Clay Henry, and it's an American pale ale. It's 4.7. So the one I had last week, I managed maybe 5 or 6 sips. And when I poured it down the sink after, the glass was just covered. You couldn't see through it.
No.
It was, you know when you give your kids Weetabix in the morning and then you pour it down and there's like the slime that's left after. It was like that down the side of the glass.
Nice.
So I'm hoping that this one, I mean, it's quite cloudy, but it's an American ale, so it's kind of meant to be. But yeah, hoping that this one's gonna not destroy me like the last one tried to anyway. So there we go. Right. Okay. So very little in terms of news, Jamie, but what have we got on the news desk for this week, my friend?
Yeah, we got a couple of bits. So news from Cardiff, first of all. Cardiff have signed former Osprey scrum half Matthew Aubrey and brought in Dragon centre Max Clark on loan. So Matt Aubrey was on trial with Cardiff and he impressed the coaches in pre-season, played in those 2 games and was offered a new deal. And Max Clark has moved to the Arms Park for a 1-month loan after finding himself falling down the pecking order of Ronnie Parade. But there is scope for that deal to be extended as well. So, some more signings from Cardiff and quite interested when that Max Clark. I was a little bit surprised, but I kind of wasn't at the same time. I think it's a move that works well for both parties. So for Cardiff, it gives them a bit more depth at centre, a bit more experienced. But for the Dragons, it does allow one of their players to get some valuable game time under their belt because it was hard to see him getting some game time with Ronnie Parade this season. You know, when you think that we got Steph Hughes there, we got Jack Dixon, we got Seal Tomkinson, we got Nyron Owen, Corey Baldwin, as you know, Lee, former Scarlet, he can play in the centre. We got Jared Rosser, who can play in the centre, although I don't like him playing in the centre, but he can play there. And plus, we got the young talent of Joe Westwood and Harry Ackerman from the Wales under-20s as well. So, it's a good move for both parties, I think. I'm interested to see how Max Clark gets on at Cardiff. I think he'll do okay. I think he'll be all right there. So, one to keep an eye on there. What do you think of that then, Ali, those signings?
I mean, it's quite sensible because we're still not entirely sure what's going on with Jamie Hill. We didn't see any sign of him at pre-season. And then, you've got Ellis Bevan then as our only real senior hooker until Thomas Williams comes back with Wales. And then with Max Clark covering Mason Grady, I'd imagine. I mean, very different players than Mason Grady.
Yeah.
But, and I imagine, if this trial goes well, Cardiff may well sign on because, we've got a habit of nicking the unwanted stuff from Ospreys and Dragons. Yeah,
fair enough. I'm interested to see if he'll stay longer than a month. I suspect that it will be there longer than a month. But sorry, what were you saying?
Well, I say we tend to send ours to the Dragons, and then the Dragons send them on to you. So,
well, unless we sent them to you first.
Welcome to the merry-go-round that is Welsh rugby. What else have we got, Joe?
Okay, news from today then. Here's one for you then, Lee. So Josh McLeod has been appointed Scarlets captain for the new season. 26-year-old back rower takes over the reins from Jonathan Davis. McLeod led the side impressively in the second half of last season in Davis's absence through injury and guiding the Scarlets to semi-finals of the European Challenge Cup. So there we go then. Josh McLeod is going to be Scarlets captain. Thoughts, Lee? Should be pleased with that, shouldn't they?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, it was the obvious choice, really. John Foxy is just a little bit too old. Ken probably at the end of career and not really expecting Ken back until end of November, start of December. So, I think he'd be probably captain for the next 2 or 3 seasons at least now. So, and he is if he can stay fit and well, not fit, but uninjured, then he's a good player to have on the pitch. So happy with that. Happy.
Yeah, it seems the obvious choice, really, doesn't it? I think that's a good move for the Scarlets. So one other bit of news that spoke this evening, shocking news, I have to say. Rugby Canada has signed Kingsley Jones to a 2-year contract extension as head coach of Canada men's rugby team. They'll see him lead the team through to 2025. So just give a bit of context. We all know how bad Kingsley Jones is as coach, right? But just for context, so he's been in charge of Canada for 6 years now. And in that time, they failed to qualify for the Rugby World Cup for the first time ever. They conceded 57 points to Spain last year. They lost to Namibia, they lost to Chile, and they almost lost to the Netherlands. And according to reports in Canada, the players don't like him. So what did Rugby Canada do? Sign him to a new contract, of course. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it? I mean, honestly, that is absolutely outrageous, isn't it? I mean, this is somebody who's been rewarded for failure, literally been rewarded for failure, because since he took over from Canada, they've just declined. They've gone absolutely backwards, record defeats. I can't get my head around it. And look, it must be a money issue. I know Canada don't have the resources of other rugby nations, I get it, but surely there got to be other coaches out there. I mean, promote from within if you have to. Surely there has to be other options. I'm flabbergasted by it. I mean, you've only got to look at Rugby Canada's Twitter and Facebook page as well to see the replies. There's a lot of piss being boiled from a lot of Canadian rugby fans are absolutely fuming at this because it's just a joke. He's been rewarded for failure. It's crazy.
Iestyn, what do you make of that, mate?
It's just bizarre, really, because the results just haven't been there. And even when they took on Chile in the repechage playoff over 2 legs, they narrowly won the first leg by a point, and then Chile caused chaos in the second leg and battered them basically. But you must think there must be someone out there that would want the job. And by reading the reaction on social media, I think if results continue as they are, it's going to be a really big struggle for Canadian rugby to get itself back on the map. But I think the supporters are really worried of the future of the entire game in Canada with this reappointment of Kingsley Jones.
Because when's the World Cup in America? Is it the next
2031?
One?
So it's the one after next.
So it's not the next one, it's the one after that. So you'd have to think, if Canada don't make the World Cup in the USA, then that will be pretty devastating for the country as a whole. But to get from where they are now to there in that time is going to take a lot of work. Do you know what I mean? They're not a country that's got a massive player base or a massive quality base. They're very much, the whole thing is spread out over the size of Europe, sort of a thing. And trying to bring 15 of those players together to play at the same time is logistically quite difficult. So to be able to pull that team together, you've got to do something different. And like I say, Kingsley Jones just isn't the person for it. He's just not. You can tell.
I have 2 possible reasons for this decision. One, which is slightly more tongue-in-cheek, is Kingsley Jones, the one who owns the Zoom license, and no one at the Canadian Rugby Union wants to get rid of it, wants to pay it for themselves. And the more serious one is, I think they're seriously trying to wind down the union so that they can focus purely on sevens, because in Canada it's basically Olympics. And they try and if it's not an Olympic sport, so they'll keep the sevens program just about taking over. But I think they just don't give a shit, really. I do think they're just keeping on the same old heads, just winding it down because they don't actually want it to be better, which is shit if you're a Canadian rugby fan. I mean, if you look at their MLR franchise, Toronto Arrows, they basically got gutted by the Free Jacks and a couple of other teams of all their top end internationals, and then they were just getting hockeyed every week. I think Free Jacks went up there and beat them 70-0. And that's a sign of people did not care. I mean, obviously the fans do, but I think we're all Welsh regional supporters, so we know full well that it's very rare that the fans actually ever get listened to, and it's distressing. But I do genuinely think that's the only rational explanation. I mean, I think it was they just want to fold the team and the union, so they don't have to worry about it.
Just seems bizarre, doesn't it? Whichever way you look at it, it's crap. For when you take, I remember how hard it was as a Welshman watching Canada beat us in the Millennium Stadium, and that was when was that? 10, 15 years ago, something like that. So, I remember the reaction from Canadian fans that night, where just, parties in the streets in Cardiff, you'd have thought that we were in Toronto. So, the support base is there, and you've got to say, the player base must be there somewhere, because they build them big in Canada. They're big chaps. So somebody will take it. Somebody will be able to make that team into a winning team. I can guarantee it. But it's not Kingsley Jones.
Absolutely not. I mean, he hasn't. If you could see green shoots, you go, well, okay, they'll keep him on because we are making some kind of progress. But they're not. They have literally declined since he's taken over. They've got worse and worse. Like I said, record defeats, and it's just absolutely baffling. He must have a bloody good agent, Kingsley Jones. I tell you that now, because he's drifted from. Honestly, the coaching gigs he's had over the years, absolutely insane. But yeah, there we go. That's it for the news for tonight.
Okie dokie. So let's move on to the Rugby World Cup then. Let's get it out of the way. Let's get the let's just get it done. So, Harley, what did you make of Wales Argentina, mate? What was your overall impression of the game?
So I'll go with my initial thought, which was we let that get away. Kudos to Argentina, they stayed in that and they were just dogged and they kept coming and they took every scrap that Wales offered them, and it was a lot. I do feel like Wales let it happen. The way you beat Argentina is not staying in a dogfight, it's getting ahead. If you look at the games New Zealand and South Africa and Australia have beaten against Argentina, against the ones they've lost, the ones they've won are the ones where they just constantly, they get up, score points, even if it's 3. They go to the corner. You've got to have everything working, and you've got to be as ruthlessly efficient as possible, so that their heads drop and drop and drop. Wales didn't do that. Other people are going to dig into what went wrong, but the fact matter is Argentina just kept their heads high and they kept fighting for every last scrap. Summarised by that Sanchez try that basically just killed us off right towards the end of the game. It just, that was just a case of seeing Wales desperately trying to play a loop play and Sanchez reading for the intercept and going in pretty much unopposed. I don't think anyone was even close to catching him, really.
So,
and then a few hours later, I sort of went, I thought we were going to finish 4th this World Cup, so actually not that bothered.
So what did you make of, and this is the bit where I thought it had all kind of started to go wrong, the anthems. At the start of the game, genuinely, our anthem was all over the shop. And yeah, it was really, really bad. There was like 3 anthems being played at the same time. There was the choir.
It wasn't in sync again.
No.
It wasn't in sync.
And wrong speed. And the Argentinian one, those boys were proper fired up at the end of that. So they started that game on fire. Was that anything to do with it, Harley? Can we blame the little kids' choir for it?
I don't think that's as big an issue for it as it was. And as people know, I don't really like talking about the referee, but this is me talking about the referee for a different reason, in that it was a different referee. And I mean, physically different, like literally different referee. So Wales had gained a load of the momentum, scored a try, and we managed to show that we are fitter than the referee, if not the other team. And Jakob Piper pulls up with an injury. And then instead of having the sort of loosey-goosey Jakob Piper, who's a lot more in favour of the defensive side of the breakdown, he's looking a lot, he's more likely to give a holding on penalty there. And then you have Carl Dixon, who is the exact opposite, who's more likely to let the attacking team get away with a late, getting into the ruck late, give them a little bit longer to get a player off the ball. And I think, as well as just that change in mindset, which Argentina were far quicker to getting up, and the fact was they were going for possession, we were going for defence, and it wasn't going to work in that interpretation of the breakdown. It just physically killed all momentum, because Wales had gotten up, scored a try, everyone's up and roaring. Then you have 5 minutes where Jakob Piper's basically calling Carl Dixon to come in. They've got to warm up the replacement touch judge. He's limping off. And it just, everything settles. And then it's almost like, right, that's gone. So then Argentina can build again. And it goes back to my thing of saying the way to beat Argentina is to just keep on them. And it's just keep hitting and getting their heads to drop. And I think I said that for me, I think was far bigger than the anthems. The anthems were just awful. But I'll be honest, I've started tuning out the anthems and like waiting for the action. I wait until I hear the ad break after the anthems, and then I'll go sit down.
Yeah, on S4C, they don't have an ad break in between the. You wouldn't have S4C, would you? So S4C still keep talking about the game and all that kind of stuff in that 3 minutes where ITV bugger off and sell some Volvos or whatever, or Land Rovers. So
I need to learn more Welsh, I do, because I need to watch SOC, because ITV coverage just depresses me, quite frankly. I really need to brush up on my Welsh and just watch SOC, because, I've had my rant on ITV coverage already on this pod. I'm not going to do it again. But yeah, S4C all the way, isn't it?
The problem I have with watching S4C is because I've got BT and I live in England. BT don't do the alternate BBC channels and they don't do regional channels like S4C. So I've got to go through iPlayer. And as Iestyn will know, when we've spoken about games in the past, streaming it through BBC iPlayer leaves you about a minute or two behind everyone else.
Yeah, it will, doesn't it? Yeah, fair point.
Yeah, because we did that when there was one of the warm-up games that was on, and I was travelling home on the motorway. The wife was driving. I had the thing, the game on my phone. I knew boys were going cracking try, superb that. And I go, what's what? And then about 30 seconds later, we go and score. And I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, come on. I had to mute the chat group so I could watch the bloody game. So, yes, let's look into some of the specifics of where it went wrong, mate. How key were those 3 lineouts in the first half, 3 lineouts in the 22, and we ballsed up all 3 of them. Scrum didn't go well. Where do you reckon we lost that game on Saturday?
Yeah, I think it was probably the momentum had shifted from those, well, as Harley said, from the referee change, if we're being completely honest. I thought Wales looked a bit controlled and when Piper was in charge, but as soon as Dixon came in, it came a little bit more of a free fall in all aspects. But those lineouts, as you said, yeah, they were very crucial, and you just felt like they needed to take one of those chances. And Harley's already alluded to, if you want to beat a lost Pumas side, you need to be on it from minute 1. And the example I've just popped in my head was the All Blacks of the Rugby Championship this year, when they were playing out in Argentina. They just ran in something like 3 tries in the opening quarter, and Argentine heads just dropped straight away then, and the game was done. And I think that's what Wales didn't get to. They obviously got that first try by Bigger, and then they had the opportunities to create more and get more points on the board, and then they just failed to capitalise on it. And then Argentina got up the other end. Boffelli kicks a penalty, and then Josh Adams' no arms challenge, which was surprisingly a penalty only, was allowed them back into the game. And then at halftime, instead of reading 10-0 or if not more, it reads 10-6 and it's game on again.
But on that Josh Adams thing, so I've not got that much of an issue with Josh Adams. I thought it was it was a little bit late, but it was nothing majorly dangerous. And then the Argentinian chappie comes running from behind his own post, screaming like a banshee with knives and guns and all of this kind of stuff, and viciously attacks Josh Adams, puts him on the floor, nearly puts him in hospital. I'm surprised the guy survived. But do you know what I mean? And there wasn't even a review of hang on, there was a 50-50 here, because he did come in, he was a good 10 meters away, and he came in and he floored Josh Adams, and there was nothing happened. And you're just like, well, if you're going to review one, you've got to review the other,
Well,
sure.
It's a case of Carl Dixon for me. After watching Ospreys against Montpellier in Europe at least 3 times, which Dixon refed and should have sent off Paul Willemse after about 5 minutes. It just felt like, he's going to probably ignore a couple of decisions where you think, hang on, you might need to have a little look at that. But yeah, it's Carl Dixon. And funny enough, that day, Willemse scored twice and there was a bit of a cagey affair. But yeah, everyone is having to go at Adams for that tackle. But the reaction, you could argue, could have reversed the decision. But when watching it live, I did think Adams did tuck in that shoulder a little bit. It did look a little bit naughty, but I think an Argentine penalty was probably the fair decision.
Okay, I'll give you that one. So, Jamie, could we find anything in that game that went well? Any positives in there at all?
I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because when it's a game of missed opportunities, it's you just focus, don't you, on those missed opportunities and what went wrong. But look, for the first 30 minutes of that game, Wales were in control of it. Let's be honest, Argentina were offering very little. I thought they looked quite sluggish, actually, in those opening 20 minutes or so. Their kicking game wasn't really good enough, was it? It wasn't really functioning. And I just can't believe how we disintegrated, really, from now those 30 minutes, the missed opportunities. I mean, we talk about those butchered lineouts, 3 of them. And I did feel sorry for Ryan Elias, to be honest. You know, he got a hook at half time. But, you know, Adam Beard is line-out captain, so he needs to take responsibility for it as well. Line-out was a disaster. In terms of positives, I mean, you know, individually, I thought, even though they weren't clearly fully fit, I thought Dan Biggar and Liam Williams played pretty well. I thought our defence for the majority of the game was pretty good. You know, I think Mike Forshaw now is standing for his blueprint on this team, and I think that the attack is starting to take a bit of shape with Alex King. But yeah, I mean, after those 30 minutes, let's be honest, it was downhill from there. And it was just so frustrating because on the one hand, I feel that Wales have done really well in this World Cup. We've exceeded expectations. You know, Gatland said the goal was to get to the quarterfinals. Well, that was achieved. I've talked about this a lot on the pod, but, you know, everybody writing Wales off saying we weren't going to get out the pool. We did that. We won the pool. We were Pool C winners. And it felt like a golden opportunity that was missed. So for me, it's mixed emotions. On the one hand, we have exceeded expectations. I think we've done well. I definitely think Wales can come out of this tournament with their heads held high. And we've got a lot of young talent in there, the likes of Jack Morgan, Dara Jenkins, Chris Chunza, who are going to be with Wales, you know, for the mainstay. They're going to have a lot of caps, and the future does look bright. But I did feel that game was such a missed opportunity, and the way that we fell apart, our discipline just went to shit. I'm gutted. I am generally gutted about the results, you know. But what I have to say, and, you know, this isn't me being negative, this is my personal opinion. If we had made the semi-final and we play New Zealand, don't forget, Dan Biggar was on one leg for the last 20 minutes of that game. Liam Williams was fucked. He was hobbling and going for the ground. There's no way we would have beaten New Zealand in our semi-final. With the fitness concerns, you know, Nick Tompkins, we don't know if he would have been available. He had to go off for HIA. There's a lot of talk about Wales and our fitness. You know, we're supposed to be this fittest team in the tournament. There's been so much emphasis on our fitness. You know, we do all these training camps, Turkey, Switzerland, Poland, and all this sort of stuff. I thought we looked tired in that game. I thought for the first time during this tour, I thought Wales looked tired, you know, and you could see players blowing out their ass. And like I said, the likes of Liam and Dan, they weren't fully fit at all. But I can understand why they started this game, because we needed them. But, you know, going into that semi-final, if we had made it, I think it would have been very, very difficult. It would have been a patched up Wales. We probably would have been battered. So on the one hand, it's a silver lining, but on the other hand, it's a huge missed opportunity to beat, let's be honest, a spluttering Argentina. They have spluttered their way into the semi-final. They've been hugely underwhelming. This was our golden opportunity to make another semi-final at Gatland. And I'm afraid we've blown it. And I'm genuinely gutted about it, you know? So mixed emotions from me.
So I like the fact I ask you what went well and what were the positives, and you go, we'd have got battered in the semi-final anyway.
We would have, though. I genuinely believe we wouldn't have stood a chance against New Zealand. Do you think we would have beaten New Zealand?
Fuck no.
In the semi-final?
No, mate. No.
There's no way.
I like the fact that that's what you pull out as a positive. We saved ourselves an absolute kicking against New Zealand.
Here's the thing: you always ask me what went right when either Wales lose or we struggle, and it's very difficult for me to take the positives. Like for me, the positives were all in the first 30 minutes, because Wales should have been at least 17-0 ahead at half time. We talked about the lineups. Dan Biggar missed a penalty, and it wasn't an easy penalty. But it was a penalty in front of the goals that I expected him to kick. You know, we had those 2 drop passes, didn't we? One from George North and the other from Josh Adams. You know, if those go to hand, that could have been another couple of tries. The game was lost in the first half. I said that to you on the WhatsApp group. That game was lost in the first half. If we go into the break and we're 70-0 or even 20-odd 0, I think it's game over. But we let Argentina back into it through sloppy defence, sloppy indiscipline, you know? It's gutting. It really is.
So,
but hey ho.
Yeah, I mean, the question now is where do you go with that team from now on, sort of thing? You know, who stays and who goes. So we know Biggar's off, Liam Williams is off, Anscombe is off. who else do we
Halfpenny
expect?
probably. I
Yeah,
don't imagine we'll see
Halfpenny.
much more of Dan Lydia. I think if he was fit, he'd been on. If he was fit enough, he'd have been on the bench or something.
Mm.
And I don't think he was particularly impressive against Portugal.
But I think
But hang on a minute, though. Hang on. Sorry, Liam Williams, mate. Don't forget, he is still eligible for Wales. Same with Anscombe. Now, yes, they won't be available for the Six Nations, but they have not said they're quitting. Far from it. They both said they want to play for Wales. So the question is, does Gatland now move forward with those players? Do you keep that little bit of experience, or do you do a complete reset and go, thanks for your service, boys, but we're moving on? So Bigger has officially retired, but Liam Williams and Gareth Anscombe are not yet retired. They're still putting their hand up for Wales, but they won't be in the Six Nations. I think it's important to clarify that.
Yeah, but I think you now look at it and you go, right, okay, we've got the core of a young squad there that we've got to move on. We've got to build it around that young squad. Gareth Davies won't be at the next World Cup. I doubt Thomas Williams will, to be honest, be at the next World Cup.
He's the same age as Hardy. There's a good chance he will be. He's still only 28. Yeah.
I thought he was older than that. I thought he was 30.
No, he's just been. It's the same as George North. Everyone thinks George North's about 36, and he's actually only 31.
Yeah,
he's been around for so long. That's fine.
Yeah, that's the thing. Some of these people have been in the squad for ages.
Yeah,
but I think that we need, particularly in the pack, to look at the new players coming through, the likes of Shins. I think that where we're going to struggle is front row. I think we've got a lot of potential in the front row, but we need somebody to come through and be world class. And the only way they do that is by playing at international level, if that makes sense. The only way you become a world class international prop is by playing really, really good props and learning from that experience. And I don't know if any of our youngsters coming through are in that kind of set. John Domachowski got fucked left, right, and centre on Saturday. He couldn't catch a ball, he couldn't pass a ball, he couldn't scrummage, he couldn't lift in the line out.
See some of those passes he got given,
straight to his hands. And why the fuck can't you pass?
Most of them were to his knees. I don't know about you. My hands are up here. They're not down by my ankles.
Well, there's your issue, because everybody else has got their hands out in front.
Because it wasn't Kemsley Mathias.
He's still a pup, though, isn't he, Domachowski? He's still learning. I think we forget that he's learning his trade to test there. But now,
the problem,
So I was just going to say there is an argument
we
that
haven't
Nicky
given
Smith
those
should have been
players a
on the
chance.
bench
That's
for
the
this
problem.
game. No, but we will have to going forward. We will.
Going to Jamie's point about players looking knackered, it's because we've had to. It's the same thing as pretty much every World Cup. We've had to play these players throughout. They've all had to play an extra game longer. That Faletau probably should have had a game off, but because of his injury, he wasn't allowed. And with Anscombe just basically being held together with sticky tape and hope at the moment, that's meant that Bigger wasn't able to have a good rep, and Bigger had to play on and had to play that game because as much as a promising talent Costello is, you're not starting him in a quarter-final. Let's be fair. If it wasn't for the Tompkins injury and just realising that Dan Bigger was basically being forced to wherever play wasn't, Bigger would have stayed on the whole 80. And that's, that was a risk Gatland took.
Yeah.
But the problem
say something
the only other option was Owen Williams, because we just didn't. I know everything goes back to Pivac, but we wasted so much time chopping and changing and trying to Callum Sheedy here, bringing Jared Evans back for 2, bringing Priestland for a token cap, capping literally every single back 5 player Cardiff have that's qualified for Wales in like 3 games. And we've ended up with a core of players who are really experienced and a core of players who have no experience. And then when one of your experienced players goes, you haven't got someone to step up and help.
But
there is a point.
I'd say that actually Pivac gave more experience to more players than Gatland ever did. And that's the problem with Gatland, because like you say, you end up with a 15, possibly a 17, maybe an 18 of decent players that play together. And then as soon as one of them gets injured or you take somebody out, how many times have we said in the past, when the bench comes on, it's weak. because we haven't got enough depth, and that's what I'm saying. We need to accept that actually some of these players, we need to rotate some of these players more, and we need to get used to rotating those players, bringing players in more to give them the experience against good teams, and maybe getting a bit of an arse kicking for a season or two. While those
there's rotating, and there's what Pivac did, which was basically I'm going to keep the same 3 second rows and rotate everyone else, and keep trying to make Will Griff-John and Josh McLeod a thing.
But there's a
balance
balance
going to happen because they're both made of paper.
But there's a balance in between the two.
Yeah.
But we can't stick with the way Gatland manages the squad, because we can demonstrate time after time that it's good up to a point. It'll work really, really well up to a point. And if we're going to go above that point, then we need to do something different. So, sorry, James, go on. What were we saying, mate?
Yeah, I just want to make a point about Sam Costello, because I really like what Gatland said after the game. So, as we all know, it's quite unfortunate. We were chasing the game. I think we were 2 points behind with me. And Costello threw a pass. Nicolas Sanchez, all his experience, picked it off, scored a try, and that was it. It was game over. And you could see he was quite clearly upset by that after the game. I really like what Gatland did when, he was asked about this at the press conference, and he said, look, that wasn't his fault. Experienced players have done that. He was very praiseworthy of Costello, and he said he's the future going forward. I thought that was really good man management for Gatland to do that, to pick him up, because he would have been utterly devastated by that. However, said that, we're talking, you say you're worried about the front row with Wales going forward. Now, I'm worried about the 10 position, because we've lost Bigger. We're not going to have Gareth Amscon available now, because he's in Japan. So we won for Six Nations. He's going to be our number one, and we got to stick with him because he is a talent, but he is raw, as we've seen. I'm not convinced by Owen Williams to the Wales shirt. I think he's great for the Ospreys. No, Iestyn disagree with me, but I've yet to see Owen Williams have a really good game for Wales yet. I just haven't seen it. All I've seen from his 6 out of 10 performances. Where else, what is the fly-off cupboard looking like now? I've seen people say, let's bring through Will Reid at the Dragons. I can tell you, no, he's not ready. Will Reid's a very talented young player, but he's not ready for international rugby yet. No way. So I'm quite concerned about the number 10, because it is a key position. I know we build it up in Wales, don't we? We focus far too much on it, but it is a very important position. That person pulls the strings, and I am concerned about what our 10 position would be like in the Six Nations. Who they're going to go with? Costello and who? Jared Evans is gone, as we know, so it's tricky.
It's going to have to be Owen Williams.
It will be.
Callum Sheedy's still eligible, but is he even going to be playing any decent game time for Bristol? He wasn't even
in the Bristol team. No, he can't even get in the Bristol team, Callum Sheedy. So where do we go from here? It's very difficult.
Weirdly, I see loads of people going for Ben Thomas, who Matt Sherratt has said he is literally going to be a 10 in emergencies. I see him as a 12, maybe 15.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that's a really good use of Ben's talents. And then you've got Arwell Robson. Again, he's still no idea. He looks promising in the start, but he's the guy who the Dragons didn't want to keep hold of. And then you've got Jack Walsh, who can't kick a goal, unless it's against Cardiff, apparently. Bastard.
So
it is a problem position, though, isn't it?
Yeah. No, you're right. In theory, we should have four or five options, and they're just not there.
So, Iestyn, what do you make of the squad changes going forward now? Who would you change? Who would you keep? And where do you think the problems are?
It's a good question. I think 10 is a real problem. Like we've said, are we going to start Costello in the Six Nations? Are they going to bring Owen Williams back into the fold? We'll obviously have to wait and see what Owen Williams' performances are in the ORC first of all, before we talk about the Six Nations. I'm not looking that far ahead, if I'm being brutally honest, but I think back row as well. I think 6 is a bit of an issue as my voice is disappearing.
Is that Dr. Pepper, mate? That's what that is.
I'm not sure what it is, but
should have gone for a 0, see?
Yeah, I should have cut down on my sugar, but I think 6 is a bit of an issue. I'm really not sure about Christ Twins, if I'm being totally honest. I know he is a bit raw, and he's obviously going to get a bit more experience under his belt, but I'm not sure as a long-term solution to the 6 shirt, and that's probably one of my biggest worries, as well as second row, because Will Rowlands is not going to get any younger, and Adam Beard has spent the last 2 years playing a ridiculous amount of rugby, which has been heavily criticised by myself. But yes, it just feels like there's certain positions where you think, okay, there's a lot of young talent coming through, and there's others when you're thinking, who's next to come in?
See, I genuinely think the solution to the Wales back row, regardless of who comes in, is to play a 77 back row. It is to put a system in place where we put 2 sevens on the pitch and we play a 77 back row with that type of game in mind, and we play to our strengths, and we go, right, okay, when it's their ball, we've got to change some of what we do, but actually our strengths are, we've got some really, really quick, dynamic back row players, and that's what we need to do. So I think if
you need a much harder, more aggressive type 5. That's the problem. And also, you then need, again, going back to what happened with Argentina, you need the resilient. Either you need to make it so patently obvious that it's going to be a turnover. I mean, there are two different ways. Everyone always thinks of dual sevens as 6 and 7, but actually, where it has worked quite well, and it worked forever for Australia, was having a 7-8, and actually the Ospreys use it as well with Morgan Morris, who is effectively a 7, but has that extra carrying ability in the control of the base of the scrum. So, I mean, there are ways to do it. You could do 3 sevens successfully if you had. Cardiff have had some fantastic examples of that, but it's not 3 of the same kind of 7, which is where my issues, although it did work. Actually, that's one thing that did work. I thought Morgan and Reffel dovetailed really well, which is something I wasn't sure. Last week, obviously, I was saying more of having Basham as more your run, just having sort of a running, carrying threat.
I think that it
can be done, but you've got to
balance. The
problem is for having someone getting over the ball, you need someone who can absolutely melt players. And the thing is, we don't really have that.
Well, I think the
most aggressive player we've got is Rhys Davies currently in the current crop, and I don't know. Are we getting to a point where we're missing his time? Shane Lewis-Hughes was thought to be that guy. I don't know. No. He's been moved to second row for a couple of games against Cardiff. That might help. Again, it'll give us a much lighter, more athletic pack. But I do think we just need to wait and see what's coming on. Actually, was it Alex Mann and Yellow Catman Harry Deeves as well? I think are good options at 6.
So I think the solution is number 8 with Faletau highly likely to call it a day in the near future, having a big, powerful, strong run in number 8 instead of a fancy-footed number 8. And that's not a criticism of Faletau, but you balance the back row. So that would be my solution. James, what were you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking that we're talking a lot about what players are going to be available to us in the future. I think what we need to have a discussion about, and there is a discussion about it currently on social media, is Warren Gatland and his future. So he was asked by Matthew Southcombe in the press conference after the game that there is a clause in his contract, and will he be seeking to activate that clause, and does he commit himself to Wales? So Warren Gatland is committed to Wales, but the question is, and I put this to any of you, should he stay now and continue the good work? Because to be fair, he has done. I know the Six Nations was a disaster, but he has got us firing for the World Cup. He did exceed expectations. Do we keep Warren Gatland and let him continue the rebuild? Or do you think, well, let's bring in someone fresh now? So I put that to any of you. I've got my own opinion on it, but I want to know what you guys think of it. Do you stick with Gatland now, or do you go, it's time for a fresh start? But bear in mind, the WRU, they moved heaven and earth to bring him back. They're paying him a lot of money, so I personally don't think the WR are going to get rid of him, but I want to put it to you guys. Would you stick with Warren Gatland now or look elsewhere?
I think most people's issue with him is the amount of money that he's being paid and the amount of time he actually spends in the country. And I think that's people's real gripe with him, is that he's getting paid an awful lot of time to sit at home in New Zealand and watch videos. And, I don't really have a view on that. I think you can do effective video coaching because he's here for the coaching side of it. He's just not here to watch games. You know, where you look at previous coaches who were based in Wales and they'd be at 2 games every weekend. They'd be at a Friday game, a Saturday game. So I think that's people's main gripe with it, is that we're paying them an awful lot of money. Where, I went to book tickets for the Six Nations last night for the boy's birthday, and the cheapest tickets available are 100 quid each.
Yeah.
And that money's going somewhere. I'm paying someone's wages when I buy those seats. And in the end, I went, no, I'm not going to buy those tickets. I can't afford to spend 200 quid plus everything else to go and watch a game against bloody Scotland. So, yeah, I think that's people's issue, is the amount we're paying him and the amount of time he's actually here and watching players, and is that an effective use of the money? And could we pay somebody, even if we paid somebody else the same amount of money who was based here, watching players more, maybe watching players in England, watching players in France, whatever, actually physically there? That I think that's people's issues.
Okay, Iestyn.
Well, I think they will keep Gatland for the next full cycle. Mainly because, well, in my opinion, who would you bring in if you would get rid of Gatland now? That's because I think, in an ideal world, you're probably looking at someone like Scott Robertson from the Crusaders, but now he's gone to the All Blacks
job. Yeah, he's not available.
And you're scratching your head thinking, who's the next? Who's next in line for Gatland? If Gatland went, or if the clause was activated. So I think they probably will keep him. But if he does go, if he walks away, or to the people that they're suggesting that he should walk away, who are you bringing in? Because it's going to be a thankless task regardless. And so I think they'll stick with him. But that's my question. If they decide to break up the clause, who would they bring in?
Well, the next obvious one, Kingsley Jones, has just signed a contract. So yeah,
that's not funny.
Question 3.
Harley, what do you reckon, mate?
I'd keep Gatland. Again, same reason, Iestyn. Who else do you bring in? 2, I completely disagree with the whole thing of, you have to turn up to a game to know what a player's doing. No, how many times have we been at a game and thought, that's bloody stupid, what on earth's going on there? And you watch it back and actually then it starts making sense, because you can see better, seeing all that, having the benefit of replays and stuff, and they're going to have far more access to footage. And actually, he does tend to live in here because he tries to avoid his son Bryn. And like his daughter lives in the UK, I think, at the moment. So he is going to be based, and actually you do see him occasionally. It's just because he's not an Eddie Jones figure who everyone pans to because they like getting a good boo out of the crowd. The thing for me is, if we get rid of Gatland, we bring the next person in. What's the say in 3 years' time? Then we get to the next autumn autumn internationals in 2026. The new coach is utterly shit, and they pay a shit ton of money to bring him back in to steady the ship. Well, I think what the WRU need to do, and work with Gatland and work with the regions, which is definitely not going to happen, but what needs to happen is they all need to work together, and Gatland turns around and says, this is the game plan I want the national team to play. This is the framework. I would like to develop these kind of players. You can make your own little innovations around it to make yourselves individual. But this is effectively the sort of style I want to play. And then everyone's going towards one point. But the problem is, you're not going to get the Scarlets and Cardiff playing Ospreys ball.
No. Different team.
Because let's be fair, not even the Ospreys want to play Ospreys ball. Or Toby Booth ball. Oh, there you go. There's the answer. Who's going to be the first coach? Get Toby Booth in.
There's
nothing. We'll have the exact same, and people will just be like, and just be moaning because it will all be Ospreys players again. But you've got to go in. Sean Edwards came in and he coached the regions to try and get a similar defensive system, so that players, when they came up, were used to it.
So before Jamie finishes off that last bit on Gatland and what have you, throw that name in, Sean Edwards. Yeah, because Sean Edwards' contract finishes after the World Cup. Yeah, because he always has a 4-year contract. That was his issue with Wales.
Yep.
If he now came back in as head coach of Wales, is that an option? Is that genuinely? Is that he's never been a head coach, has he?
You're taking a risk then, but then again, Andy Farrell was never a head coach, and that actually, as much as we're taking the piss out of Ireland going out in the quarterfinal again, that was an incredibly successful coaching reign. I mean, far more than Gregor Tanzad, who's had like nearly 8 years in the job for Scotland. Because he's actually won trophies. That means something, not just weird derby trinkets.
So, James, finish off the World Cup for us, then, mate. So, do you keep? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, the first thing to say, you mentioned Sean Edwards there. He signed a new deal last year, so he's contracted to 2027. So, unfortunately, you're not going to get Sean Edwards in, and the WRU are not going to shell out that kind of cash. And I doubt whether Sean Edwards would want to come back, quite frankly. So that rules Sean Edwards out. He's contracted to France till 2027. I just had to look that up there because I remember he signed a contract recently.
Yeah, he did, didn't he?
But
yeah.
I just think if there's no credible alternative, then you just stick with Gatland, because I saw a lot of people saying on Sunday morning, we need to make a fresh start. We need to move on from Gatland. And I'd see people saying, who would you bring in? And they go, oh, I don't know. There's got to be someone out, Sean Edwards, maybe, Scott Robertson. Well, no, they already contracted the new jobs. I don't know who you bring in. So unless you have a credible alternative, and I'm not talking bloody Eddie Jones, I mean a proper, sensible alternative, no Kingsley Jones. But allegedly, yeah. So I just don't know, like Iestyn said, who do you bring in? Who's out there now? Dai Young? I mean, come on. I mean,
he's available.
Who are you going to bring in? Well, he is available.
Yeah, at least he's available.
I'd be great, because you'd never pick a single Cardiff player just to spite the club after all that bullshit.
Interesting point, though. Michael Checker, apparently now his contract is coming to an end after the World Cup. So, I mean, if you said to me, any other alternative, that could be one person. And Harley's shaking his head. I'm just trying to think of people who are available. And he is a good coach. You can't deny he's a good coach. Michael Checker is a very good coach. So why not? Why are you shaking your head? What's wrong with that?
That's about it.
What's wrong with that?
He is notorious for burning out players and coaches. Like we just about
perfect for Wales.
Yeah,
that's the Welsh way. That's what Gatland does.
Yeah, but I said the thing is, whereas Gatland's considered more of a better man manager. I mean, he did waterboard his players this time out, which clearly didn't work. But check it. Like, if you look at Michael Checker teams after about 18 months, which we're getting to now, so no wonder his contract's finished, it sort of just tumbles off a cliff, and it's just infighting, and no one likes each other, which is a bit like Welsh Regions, but the team Wales tends to stay a little bit better.
Right. So let's
Checker. If we're getting Checker in, we get him in 2026. No earlier.
We need to stick with Gatland, don't we? Because, like I said, WRU moved heaven and earth for him, and Nigel Walker's already said that they want him to stay for the next cycle. So Gatland to stay for me.
Yeah. Let's move on then. Let's park that. We'll skip semi-final predictions. Let's just assume that New Zealand. Yeah. Oh fuck! I got all 4 of them wrong. I managed to pick a loser in every single one of them. But let's just assume New Zealand beat Argentina, South Africa beat England, so then it's New Zealand and South Africa in the final, and it's an amazing final, and we'll talk about that next week. Let's talk about important things. Let's talk about URC. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty of important stuff, and let's do that. So let's have a chat. So just let everyone know now that we've got a podcast for each individual reason, like we said before. Okay, so Iestyn is on our Ospreys and Podcast Cymru. Have I got Podcast Cymru right, Iestyn? I haven't actually asked. Does the name work for the Welsh language one?
Yeah, that's probably it's good. It's good enough anyway. I've heard a lot weirder names for podcasts and things in the Welsh language. So Podcast Cymru's fine.
That's right. God bless Google Translate for that one. So yeah, so we're going to leave it to the podcasts to go into a lot of depth on the individual squads and all of that kind of stuff. So, but we're just going to do kind of like an overview of what we're expecting, who our breakthrough players are, where we think we might be a little bit vulnerable, and where we think we're probably going to finish at the end of this season. So let's kick off with you then, Jane. Who's starring in the Dragons camp at the minute, mate? What kind of season are you expecting, and where you're going to finish?
Look, so I'm feeling cautiously optimistic about the Dragons this season, and I'm doing so for a number of reasons. So I think going into private ownership was really important for the club, and I think had that deal not been done, I think that would have been the end for the Dragons. And credit to David Buttress and his consortium, we've sorted that. So we're in control now of our own destiny. I think that was really important going forward. So I think that's good. I think our recruitment has been pretty good. Kai Evans and Rodrigo Martinez have been really good in pre-season. They're the standouts for me, for what I've seen. Our set piece looks solid in pre-season, which is something you don't often say about the Dragons. Let's see if that keeps up in the new season. But for what we saw in pre-season, we actually had a scrum and our driving lineup looked tasty. So that was encouraging. And look, we've had an unbeaten pre-season. We were the only Welsh team to not lose a game. We had good wins over the Ospreys and Scarlets, and we're heading into the Edinburgh game in pretty good shape, I think. And we've got 4 out of the first 5 games being played at Ronnie Parade. So for me, it's really important the Dragons get off to a good start. They've got to have a successful block in that period, because if they don't win any games or many games, I think it's going to be they've got a tough run of fixtures after that. So it's really important they have a good couple of wins in that first block. But look, we always end up in a basement battle with Zebra, but I'd like to think that we could finish a bit higher than 15th, if I'm being honest. But for me, there's 3 targets for the Dragons. These are my 3 targets I want to see the Dragons do. So I want us to avoid being the worst Welsh team. That would be good. That would be nice. I want us to end that silly hoodoo against Cardiff. This is getting ridiculous. That needs to be put to bed. And we need to make the knockout stages in the European Cup and get a home draw. So those are the 3 things I think those are the targets I think the Dragons should be aiming for. And I do think they are realistic and achievable targets. But in terms of where we'll end up, I've got us down as finishing 14th. My co-host Gavin on the Dragons layer part, he said 13th. Well, no, listen, it's pointless saying stupid shit like, we're going to finish 8th or, in the top 5. You got to be realistic, haven't you? You've got to be realistic, and you've got to set achievable goals. So this is just where we are with the Dragons. I do think 14th, 15th, but I am going to say we'll finish 14th. But to be perfectly honest with you, again, we had this conversation on our Dragons pod. I don't think any of the Welsh regions are going to make the top 8. I think there's a block between 9 and 16, and I see that we'll come on to this later, but I think we're going to see the Welsh teams in that block of 9 to 16. And yeah, like I said, it would be nice to see the Dragons not be the worst Welsh team, because that hasn't happened for a number of years. I mean, last time it happened, I think it was 2019, it was the Ospreys who were the worst team. Because I think they had Alan Clark then, didn't they, as coach? But yeah, it's... I'm looking forward to the new season. I am looking forward to it. I'm going into it in high hopes, but ask me later on in the season, and I'll probably have a different viewpoint on things. But I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic about the Dragons, I think.
I love the fact that you go, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think we're going to do really well 14th.
Yeah.
It's an improvement
that would be
last
good.
season.
As I said, that would be an improvement. We won 4 games last season. That would be an improvement. So,
yeah, I think
I'm a realist, mate. I'm a realist.
I think you're undercooking yourself again. I genuinely think that this could be a season for the Dragons. I genuinely do. I think it's...
I've heard that so many times. You've got no idea how many times I've heard that. I've had enough false stones to last a lifetime. I've had too many false stones.
Was their year to win the Welsh Shield purely because no team has more experience in Wales of being on a £5 million budget than the Dragons.
Yeah, they're used to working on a slow budget.
Well, that's an important point, mate, because when you look at the other 3, they've had to massively cost cut. The Dragons are by far the most stable team. because they've used to working on a low budget. They haven't had a mass exodus of players. So, Harley is right there in what he's saying. So that does go in our favour. But I don't think we win the Welsh Shield. I can't see us being top Welsh team. But I would like us not to be the bottom Welsh team. That would be nice for me. And I think, like I said, that's an achievable, realistic target.
Okay. Harley, Cardiff.
Well, obviously, I mean, let's be honest. We were down to a bare bones crew by the start of pre-season. Maybe this has helped the fact we haven't been able to start pre-season till late, so we're not completely knackered out, so hit the ground running. I think for Cardiff, really look forward to seeing how Tinius de Beer goes, because by all accounts in pre-season he was lighting up everything. Plus some of the new props we've got seem pretty decent. I mean, Kieran Alzarati and Teddy Williams look like they are, it looks like they've already made a huge step up from their time in the Wales camp, from all the things I've heard from people who've been to the 2 games. I mean, I think Shane Lewis-Hughes coming back, he's got a big chance of breaking, especially with all the problems at 6. And, people are touting him as maybe being our next Josh Turnbull, who's getting on a bit and maybe hopefully relying on less. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what happens when, particularly for us at fullback, and which leads on to also at centre. So obviously we've got it looks like our main guys for fullback are going to be Cam Winnett and Jacob Beetham, and Jacob Beetham's also been playing a bit of 12. And obviously you've got Ben Thomas, who does a similar thing, which suggests a little bit how we're going to play. In terms of the season, I think if we can retain the Welsh Shield, that would be great. I think that's a realistic expectation for us. And then the big thing for us, I think, is the big deciding factor in us not making the playoffs last season was not picking up bonus points. When we were winning games, we weren't ruthless enough to score 4 tries. And when we were losing games, we couldn't just stay in the fight till the very end and get the pick up losing bonus points. So I'd very much like to do that, and I'd like the Arms Park to be a complete fortress. If we could try and win near enough every home game, I think that'd be fine. And then, if we shit the bed at the end of the season in South Africa, it doesn't really matter as much. I mean, the big thing for me isn't necessarily URC, it's going to be Europe. And I hope we just have a fucking laugh, because we have got banter teams, frankly, because, all right, I know Bath have been utterly dire in the Premiership. They've got Finn Russell, and if you've got Finn Russell in your team, you are a banter team. That's the end of it. There's no 2 ways about it.
Someone's sending out for a Greg's at half-time when you're playing them at home, aren't they? Exactly.
More than happy to send him to give Finn a couple of pies when because I mean, I've got because it's actually going to be at Cap, which is great. Because for some reason we weren't allowed to have French teams said they're not coming to Wales this year unless they're utterly dog shit.
Okay, so moving on from Harley's rather positive assessment of Cardiff. So Iestyn. So Ospreys, probably perennial underachievers, always should have achieved more than what they should, with the exception of the Cardiff back row. I'd say you probably got more kind of names and bulk and solid players, if you like. Are the Ospreys gonna break the top 8 this season?
I said last season that the Ospreys would break into the top 8, and I was wrong. Which a season which saw a few heavy defeats mixed in with 2 fantastic European victories and almost a third. So I don't know. They've lost a lot of players. A lot of senior players have obviously departed from the club. But I think that in terms of squad depth and the youngsters slowly coming through, I think it's quite an exciting squad. And I think it's a squad that Toby Booth is a bit of a fan of as well. He's well known of producing young players and developing them into senior rugby. But I can't see them breaking into the top 8, unfortunately. I think they'd probably finish either 10th or 11th. I'm undecided on who's going to win the Welsh Shield. It's between probably Scarlets and Ospreys. I think Cardiff probably might slip down third. But I think they're going to be behind the 4 Irish sides, behind the 4 South African sides, and probably behind Benetton as well. I think they've geared up with a good pre-season, I think. And this could be the season for them to develop and possibly kick into that top 8 themselves. But for the Ospreys, I think they need to find more consistency. The season before last, they couldn't find bonus points. They found bonus points, but somehow ended up on the wrong side of results thanks to errors or Rhys Webb forgetting where he is and letting the Lions scrum half score a try, which decisively cost them the game. And they just need, I think there's not many expectations from supporters. I think it's going to be a tough season as it is for all 4. But I think probably a couple of targets would probably win most of the derbies. It would be nice to finally win the Parker Scarlets again, as they haven't done that in many years. I'm pretty sure every time I've gone down there, it's ended in defeat or a draw, thanks to Jack Welsh, and possibly end the European hoodoo. They came ridiculously close against Saracens, despite faltering away, thanks to a Rhys Webb quick throw-in, which I try my best not to mention, but there we are. So obviously the Challenge Cup is a bit of an opportunity to give, younger players, a bit more experience, a bit more game time. And if they can get a home draw in the Challenge Cup for the knockout rounds, you just got to hope Swansea City aren't playing, so the Ospreys don't have to play their game in the Principality Stadium. Otherwise, I would be getting serious flashbacks to the Stade Francais game in 2017.
Yeah, well, I think you might find that there are some key clashes with Swansea City this year that are being worked on in the background. So, okay, for me and the Scarlets, I mean, pre-season's been a bit of a pisser because we were all expecting so much more than what's actually been delivered. And I'm still kind of optimistic for the season, but not as optimistic as I probably was before pre-season started. I think we've got players. We've signed Plumtree and Johan Lloyd that. I wasn't a fan of Johan Lloyd at Bristol, to be honest, but I'm willing to give him a go and see how he feels in for Costello. Like you said earlier, I think Costello's going to spend a lot of time with Wales this year. So Johan Lloyd's going to have to step into those boots fairly quick. And the annoying bit is that Dinky Jones has played the majority of pre-season at 10, with a few minutes here and there for Johan Lloyd, which has been frustrating. I think Plumtree is going to be exciting. The chances are he'll get called into the Wales squad for Six Nations, which will be a bit of a shitter. And then we've got young players coming through like Kemsley Mathias, Combier, Tuipulotu, Dan Davis. I think was absolutely outstanding last season, and isn't in the Welsh squad because we're just so gifted with sevens, and I think that's going to work really well for us down there. I can't see him getting in the Wales squad bar a whole series of injuries. Half the Cardiff back row would have to disappear and all that kind of stuff. And then you got players like Joe Roberts. So we've got a core of some really talented players there. I think Dwayne has been, he's put his hands up at the end of last season and said, he's learned a lot as a coach through the start of the season where things were really, really bad and where Lee Blacker came in and kind of helped him a little bit. And he's like, actually, I need to surround myself with good coaches. And we've done that with the South African chappie whose name I've forgotten, who's a forwards coach. So, you put all of that together and you think this should be a good season. Am I optimistic? Probably. I think the key battle for us, the key players, the key position for us this year is actually hooker. We've got Ken Owens likely to be out until fuck knows when. You've got Ryan Elias, who's going to be away with Wales. So then you've got Sean Evans, who, if you ask a lot of Scarlet supporters, actually is probably our best hooker at the minute. He does.
I think he's great.
Yeah, he's absolutely outstanding. So but he's our number 3 hooker. He's probably going to play the majority of the season for us, and I think he's going to be outstanding. But then it's squad depth and stuff like that. So, I think the first 2 games of this season are massive for the Scarlets. We need to come home from South Africa with something. We need points somewhere along the line, whether that be losing bonus points or 4 tries here, there, or everywhere. But I think that's key. And then, I think we all underplay ourselves. I think at least 2 Welsh sides will get into the top 8 this year. I genuinely think. Yep. I think when you bring that amount of players through, I think we've been holding on to older players for too long and not allowing younger players to develop early enough. And I think we're going to develop a lot of young players this year that we get to the end of the season and they go, is it only their first season?
We have to with the budgets. We have to, no choice now.
Yeah. So, Harley, what were you going to say on that, mate?
I just want to sort of go. First of all, with Joe Roberts, I think he should be 13 for Wales. Saying that, as a Cardiff fan, I feel like should get me thrown through the stocks. But I think Mason Grady is a very particular kind of player, and I think with the sort of game plan Wales want to go, actually, we really need defensively sound proper 13, and Grady just isn't quite. He's very good going forward. But the thing is, he goes forward too much for most people to catch up with. It's similar issues as Bastrom had when he started playing for Wales. But, I mean, that's by the big thing I was going to say, because everyone's mentioned about how, obviously, we had to get rid of people in the squad. Do we feel for, like, the most, how do people feel about the players we've all had to get shot of and get back in? Right? Personally, for me, for Cardiff, I think there were some players that I think we were going to get rid of anyway. And then other players I really didn't want to see go. And you can tell they were gone because of the budget. And they've kept players who I maybe would have tried to push on and kept thing, I mean, a certain scrum half may or may not have taken some naughty substances. Iestyn mentioned a few times. Do you feel that actually overall benefits the Ospreys? And with Halfpenny coming off the books, Liam Williams, these players who don't get a lot of game time for their regions for whatever reason.
My wife is.
Do we think we've overall got? Do you think overall some of the squad? I mean, Dragons probably were closest to 1 in 1 out. Do you think the players you've gained are better than the players you've lost? And just opening up to the floor of what people think.
My wife is gutted that Lee Halfpenny is gone. Put it that way.
Yeah, my wife is gutted to see the end of Lee Halfpenny.
She's the only one in our household who's gutted to see Lee Halfpenny go. So I'll leave that to you. But yeah, I don't think. I think we've been holding on to players for too long. I'm surprised, genuinely surprised to see at the Scarlets the likes of Samson Lee, Foxy. If I'm honest, as hard a decision as that is, it was probably a difficult decision, and I think he's probably on a 2-year contract, so it might be his last season. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Foxy go. Scott Williams, genuinely, as highly as I rate Scott Williams, genuinely surprised to see him still there. And Johnny McNichol, I'm surprised that he wanted to stay. So, he could have been another one that would have gone and could have made a lot of cash elsewhere, even if he was in the middle of a 2-year contract. So I'm surprised to see him still there. So, some of the players that have gone, I'm not too disappointed, but I'm surprised that more didn't go. Put it that way. The rest. What about you, Iestyn? Anyone? Let me ask Jamie's favourite question. Just on the Ospreys, who's the player that you're most glad that you kept?
Oh, I wasn't going to give you the answer yet. I was going to mention how important.
I'll say his name, please. Just say his name.
Say the line, Bart. Say the line.
Say the name, Bart.
I was going to mention how important the re-signings of Jack Morgan and Dewi Lake were, but as you all are gagging for it, I may as well say Nicky Smith. But I was just looking through the squads the last couple of days or so, and when looking at the departures from the Ospreys list, you got Rhys Webb, Thomas Francis, Alan Wynne-Jones, Bradley Davis is retired, But looking through those key positions of the players I just mentioned, at tight end, there's Tom Botha. You've got Rhys Henry, who's still quite young despite looking rather old. And if people who know me or follow me know how much I really rate Rhys Henry. But second row as well, despite losing AWJ, I always felt like last season could have been the real good season that Rhys Davies could have had in the second row alongside Adam Beard. And I felt like at times there was the opportunity missed. Okay, Davies did start a couple of big European games at 6, but they just wanted AWJ in there all of a sudden. And I think at 9 as well, I think this could be a really good season for Ruben Morgan-Williams. Obviously, with Webb departed, and he's going to be the first choice 9 now. And they still got senior players. I mentioned Lake, Nicky Smith, Jack Morgan. Morgan Morris is now going to be a senior type. And then in the backs as well, George North is if he is still around post World Cup. There's been a couple of rumours floating around, but if Alex Cuthbert is back, then in my opinion, I think Alex Cuthbert will be a very vital cog to the Ospreys backline. And then you've got the likes of Owen Williams, Kieran Williams as well, who've both had international experience over the summer, and then exciting young talents. Someone like Max Nagy, Matt Prothero. So I think it's a bit more balanced up in terms of senior players to younger player. But yeah, despite the big losses, it's a couple of really, the positions are kind of filled up.
Yeah, because Osprey's still got a good squad, though, haven't they?
Yeah,
they've still got a good squad, I think.
Yeah, you can just looking at the team for the weekend. Okay, there's a couple of question marks over a couple of players, but yeah, it's quite well balanced, and despite the big losses, it doesn't look that bad. As when you look at the departure list, you're like, oh my god, this is frightening level.
What departure list? We didn't get one from the Ospreys.
Oh, sorry.
I'd rather leave a list.
Looking through the list of players, well, you can work out the players that were leaving, I should say, and you're thinking, oh dear, this doesn't look good. But you look through the actual squad, which is online, actually, the Osprey squad for this season. I'm pretty sure it's on their website somewhere. You look through the positions, the players that have lost. They've got enough cover there, I suppose, and it's a good experience for the younger players in those positions to have some good game time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, let's do a really, really quick rundown of where you think your side's going to finish at the end of this season, and then we'll talk about the games this week then. So, Harley, just a number, where are Cardiff going to finish?
I think they're going to finish 10th again, but top the World Shield.
Okay, Jamie?
14th.
14th, okay, yes. Yeah, Iestyn?
11th and 2nd in the Shield.
Okay, so I still think we're underplaying ourselves. I'm going to go Cardiff. Cardiff. I'm looking at Harley and I go, yeah, Cardiff are going to go top. I'm going to go Scarlets are going to finish 6th. I genuinely.
I think the manage that as well. It's Cardiff winning the Shield, though.
Yeah, I genuinely think 2 Welsh sides will make it into Europe next year. I think we'll be pleasantly pleased.
They'll do very well. They'll do if one side gets into top 8, they'll do very well. If 2 do it, I think that's a bit optimistic personally, but okay.
No, yes, just we'll see. Dragons in you coming out, Jamie. That's what that is.
I'm a realist, mate. I'm not a blind optimist. Sorry, so that's what being a Dragons fan does to you.
Well, talking of blind optimism, let's look at this weekend's games. So, let's start with the Ospreys trip to Connaught. And bearing in mind, though, Iestyn, right, that there's a storm coming in on Wednesday that's meant to last until Sunday, yeah, and the Ospreys are travelling to Connaught for the first game of the season. What's your expectations, right?
Well, first of all, happy new season, everyone. Nice to see the Ospreys. And well, now that I did have a look at the weather forecast when I saw the news earlier, and I did see that there was a storm coming, and I was looking at the Wales weather forecast on Wednesday, and it's just covered with rain. So if that's the omen for the weekend in Galway, which isn't a surprise, then it's going to be a little bit tricky because the Ospreys are without probably 6 internationals. It depends. Well, it obviously depends on how much break they get from the World Cup, but I'm not expecting any of them to be back and flying in to a URC game a week after Wales have been knocked out of the World Cup. But and the last trip the Ospreys had to Galway was a bit stormy as well, and they got lost by 40 points, let alone about the weather. And it would be nice to see the Ospreys kick on to a winning start, but in terms of the Ospreys' perspective, it's probably the 3rd worst away day you could possibly have to start the season, behind Rodney Parade and Parc y Scarlets, because the records are just not fantastic in any of those grounds. And it's going to be tough. You can hope there's few experienced players there. You know, Rhys Davies, as we mentioned, I think could be a real good season for him. Justin Tipurick's still around. Yeah, he looked quite. It was nice to see him back during the preseason. I think him and Harry Deves could be that 6 and 7 in the back row, and potentially it'd be nice to see Will Griffiths back as well. He was captain in the Ospreys as he went off injured last season away in Ulster, so it'd be nice to see him back up front. But yeah, it's going to be tough out in Galway, and if I had to give a prediction so early on, I think Connacht will win by a good couple of scores. Nothing against the Ospreys, but it's just going to be a tricky start to the season.
Well, save predictions till after, because I've got to move on to a different sheet on my spreadsheet to log all of this. So we'll do this bit, and then I can move to a different sheet. I'm not talented enough to have 2 spreadsheets open at the same time.
Change my prediction by the time we get to it.
Yeah, because Carwyn does that anyway, because all of the boys have got access to this sheet. So Carwyn will say on a Monday night, he'll go, oh yeah, Ospreys to win by 20. And then I look at it on a Friday afternoon and it's like Ospreys to win by 1. And I'll go, I'm fairly sure that's not what he predicted. So Jamie hosting hosting Edinburgh at 3:05. So Ospreys are on S4C, but Dragons game isn't and is on Viaplay. So make of Viaplay what you will. But so let's hope more people go and watch the game live, because that would be the key. So what's your expectations for that game?
Well, Dave Flanagan said last week that he's got a full squad of players to choose from, apart from George Young, who suffered a concussion in left knee, and obviously Lewis Jones has fractured a cheekbone. So those 2 players won't be available. Other than that, we got a full strength squad, which is good news, because that's something the Dragons always struggle with, injuries and not having the full strength squad. So I said on my Dragons pod, this is a massive season for 2 players in particular for me, Ollie Griffiths and Leon Brown. I love Leon Brown, as you know, but he's really got to start showing his potential now. And I believe he's out of contract as well. So this is his last season before, his contract expires. He's got to get a run of games and he's got to stay fit. And I think if the Dragons are going to do well this season, those 2 players, for me, especially Ollie and Leon, they've got to stay fit. In terms of this game, Edinburgh, this for me is a winnable game. Now, I don't know what the situation of the Scottish players coming back from the World Cup, because as Harley mentioned earlier, we saw Finn Russell on the bench for Bath. But, with the Scottish Rugby Union, I don't know if they're going to release their players for this game. I don't expect they will, but they may release 1 or 2. I don't know. That'll be interesting to see. But like I said, with the first 5 games, 4 of them at home, they've got to get off to a winning start, Dragons, because there is a feel-good factor at the moment. And I think if we were to lose against Edinburgh, it would suddenly start to feel a bit shit again. So this is a game they got to win. They got Cardiff the week after, which is, of course, the day after the Rugby World Cup final. So they've got to go into that with a bit of belief, a bit of momentum. So, I'm optimistic about this game. I definitely think this is a winnable game for the Dragons. It's at home. So, I'm feeling pretty positive about it, I think.
Okay. So, Harley, you were going to jump in with something about the Dragons and then give us your idea of just how battered Cardiff are going to be by Benetton, mate.
So first of all, I think weirdly, Dragons might benefit from the fact that Argentina beat Wales, because they're not going to have the Argentinians. who'd normally be supplementing the squad, and basically the ones who dragged Edinburgh kicking and screaming in that week. So last season when they beat Cardiff at home, you know, it was basically Buffelli and a couple of the other Argentinians who just dragged them through. So I think that might help Dragons. Oh, they won't have Bertrand, but I think Rodri Williams is more than capable, and I'm a huge fan of Dane Blacker. Ever since he came up through Cardiff, you know, Scarlets had him for a bit, but couldn't handle how awesome he was. So Dragons are having to go before he eventually comes home. I think for Benetton, I don't know. Unfortunately, I haven't seen it. I know they beat Ulster a while back. I don't know if their Italian internationals are going to be back for this one, or if they're going to try and rest them. Cardiff at home, I'm hoping they're going to take all the positives from pre-season and go through. I think Cardiff. I'm hoping Cardiff will go first game of the new season. If cap out, and you know, hopefully the home crowd and the noise will carry him through as it has in plenty of other games. I don't think it's going to be a great game, but it will at least. I am hoping we'll pull something off, because it's one of those momentum things. If we lose, you know, and go back to my key hopes of Cardiff, we need to win our home games. So I think we should scrape through.
I think Benetton have really recruited well over the summer. Like half the Italian under-20s for the last 2 seasons, and now it seems to be the progression. You leave the under-20s and you go to Benetton, and then some of you might end up in France, but I think a lot of them just kind of commit themselves to Benetton now, and then there's a trickle-down effect on Zebra as well, which Zebra have recruited really well. So yeah, I think that's a tough game for Cardiff. So that is on S4C. That's at 5:15 on Saturday. So normally, what I say with games on like Viaplay and S4C and things like that. So normally, what I'm going to try and do through this season is we're going to try and do watch-alongs, but you know, we're all in trouble at the minute with various other halves about how much rugby we're watching, and I think it's pushing it a little to try that again this week. I'm away this weekend anyway. I'm away, so I can't do it this weekend. So that's me safe and secure.
Your wife isn't going to be annoyed about you watching World Cup.
Yes, at the final whistle, there was a little bit of me. The first thing she was sat next to me on the sofa, and she went, "Well, that sorts next weekend out, then, doesn't it?" And I was like, "Ah, yes, it does. I'm not in the doghouse anymore."
As someone who else has been told it's date night on Saturday.
You've been given your instructions. So, Cardiff. I've done it again. Scarlets play the Bulls on Sunday down in South Africa. So what I'm hearing at the minute is that Gatland has put a request in for some Scarlets players to not travel to South Africa so that they're available for the game against the Barbarians, which I think is a load of bollocks. And if that request has come in, I'm hoping he's been told where he can go, because that's not the way it works.
You're not on about the hypothetical I posed a couple of weeks ago.
I've heard it. So there was a couple of others, and then it came from somebody who's spoken to somebody at a club. So you know, it's one of those. So and so said that. So and so said that. You know, so
it's a serious thing, and I don't know if we've got to the end. I'll explain part of the problem, but
it's from what I understand, we're taking a full squad out there, and as far as I understand, they leave on Tuesday, Wednesday. I think I don't know. So we'll know pretty much. We'll know if that's true well before the weekend. So the Bulls in South Africa, you know, I think a lot of the focus in South Africa at the minute is on the national side, but then there's a lot of positivity, so swings and roundabouts. I think I'm thinking a losing bonus point, it would be a good result for us out there. I know we beat them last year, but we were on kind of the crest of a wave then, and the weather was shit. And I think the weather out in South Africa is actually going to be quite nice, and I don't think that'll play into our hands. And I just think it'll be a slow start to the season again. But I'd like to see us take minimum one losing bonus point, maybe, a try scoring bonus point as well out of that game.
Plus you're at altitude, and the Bulls don't lose many people to the box squad, which is a thing. The reason why they're so high up is because they don't lose players.
Cheers for that, Harley. It's really cheering me up. That is right.
That's reassured you, isn't it?
You did the same for me, so just return the favour.
Yeah, but we did beat them last season, albeit over here. So I think it's going to be an interesting
but did you beat
game.
the Sharks in Durban?
I know, but we beat them home here. So I think it's going to be it's a bit of a start to the season. Somebody's got to start the season with 2 games out in South Africa, and this year it's our turn. So it may work in our favour, it may not. But given the pre-season that we've had, I guess we're going to have another season where we build into the season. So yeah, I'm not expecting a massive, but I expect us to come back with points of some sort. Right, time is massively running away with us, gentlemen. And I've just flicked over to the spreadsheet to see that Harley's actually filling the spreadsheet in as we speak. What a good boy. Harley will be you're the kind of boy that brings in an apple for teacher and says, here you go, sir, have an apple. And well done, you.
Teacher's pet.
I only
That's
did
what
that
you're saying,
to
it's
get
a
away with not
teacher's
bringing
pet.
in my homework. Just saying.
Right, so run us down your scores then, Harley. So Connacht against Ospreys, you've got.
So I've gone for Connacht by 12. I mean, again, they're not really losing any. It's only really Bundyaki and Mac Hansen who Ireland have lost. They're definitely not going to be playing next week because Ireland are pretty strict on the people they central contract and rest. Probably to a higher extent than Wales are. So I think Connacht by 12. I mean, they're basically going to have a full team, and Ospreys going to be without a lot of their key players. I don't quite know how well they're going to play against real opposition, not Welsh regions. And let's be fair, they lost to the Dragons, so can't be in that good a state. Then I'm going to go for Edinburgh by 3, just purely because it's
Yeah, go on.
So for those of you who are listening on an audio podcast and not on the YouTube, Jamie just stuck his middle finger up at me, and fair fucks to that one. And he's going to be even more annoyed when I say Edinburgh are going to win by 3 because they score a try at the death.
Oh, sounds about right.
Because that's the most Dragons way to lose.
Yeah.
Cardiff are going to win by 3 again by some pure luck and the crowd somehow winning a penalty for them.
Right.
And then I'm going to finish off by the Bulls by 12, which actually I think at altitude, first game of the season, Scarlets don't start very well. I think it's actually a pretty decent score.
Okay, well, write it in then, you lazy git. There you go. Look, I've done it for you. There you go. Bulls by 12. God, that's
Bulls by 12.
No, you didn't. I can see it there. I can see it on the screen. It said you hadn't written any. Yeah.
So I hadn't pressed enter.
Oh, you were very nearly going to get a red mark from teacher there. Right, Iestyn. Let's have your prediction, mate. Connacht and Ospreys.
I really want to be optimistic, but no, I can't see it happening.
Yes, I'm spending an hour with Jamie.
Should we make Iestyn give Carwyn predictions?
You are?
Should we make Iestyn give the Carwyn level predictions to keep the league prediction league
Ospreys by 30.
Yeah.
Ospreys by 30. Edinburgh by 28. Benetton by 73. And Bulls by 1 million.
I can't really go. No, I'd lose all credibility for any future job I'd have then. Good grief. But I think Connacht by roughly Connacht by 15, yeah, it's going to be a tough one. I'd like to see it closer, but yeah, it's going to be a bit of a long afternoon, especially in the last quarter. I think it's going to be quite close, but I think Connacht might score a couple of tries near the end as a young side will fatigue a little bit. Dragons Edinburgh is an interesting one because the last time I watched Edinburgh play, they were against the Ospreys and they scored a bonus point in about 20 minutes. And I have to admit the Ospreys were awful that night, but
And most nights.
Yes, you are right there, especially last season. But I think I'm really not sure, because when obviously you start of a new season, you think, oh, Dragons might be up for this, and I think they will. But I've got an awful feeling it's going to be Edinburgh by 5. Sorry, Jamie. I'm really sorry.
Don't be sorry, it's fine.
But
you haven't heard his prediction yet.
yeah, just see a lopsided prediction incoming. But yeah, I think even though despite the obviously the Scots might still be away and Boffelli is still away with a couple of others, I think probably Edinburgh might just do enough to win. And I think Cardiff are going to win quite comfortably against Benetton. I don't know why. I think last season they beat them quite comfortably, but it was during the Six Nations, so Benetton did lose quite a lot of internationals. Then the following week they won in Swansea, so you never know. But Cardiff to win by 10, I think they'll do a good job there, and it'll be a good optimistic start of the season before the inevitability of a late season collapse. And
where we thrive.
And it's going to be tough for the Scarlets out in South Africa, isn't it? Let's be honest, it is going to be tough. And the Bulls have actually got quite a good squad, and looking through it, Ruan Norge, for example, is just a freak. I'm pretty sure he's still there anyways, unless I've missed some major news. So Bulls by, it could be quite a tricky second half. Bulls by 17. I don't think it'll be horrific scoreline, but I think they'll put a couple of scores in.
17 is fairly horrific, mate, but I'll let you get away with that one.
It's a lot worse.
Yeah, it could be a lot worse. Right, Jamie. So Connacht and Ospreys, mate.
Yeah, it's a tough opening for the Ospreys out in Galway, isn't it? I think it's going to be closer than what Iestyn thinks. I got a feeling the Ospreys are going to cause Connacht some problems. So I'm going to say Connacht will win, but I don't think it's going to be like 10 or 15 points. I'm going to say Connacht by 6 on that one. I think it's going to be a tighter game. Yeah. Dragons Edinburgh. Look, I'm feeling positive about this game. I know that's unlike me, but unbeaten pre-season. Our set pieces look pretty good. We got to take the positives from pre-season into this game. Edinburgh are going to be depleted. If Edinburgh were full strength, yeah, I would be quite concerned, but they're not. So this for me is an opportunity. It's a game that Dragons have to win. So I'm going to back us. I'm going to go Dragons by 8. Cardiff Benetton. I think Cardiff will win this one. I think it'll be quite comfortable. Benetton will be depleted. I can't see Cardiff losing at the Arms Park. If it was away at Benetton, maybe it'd be a different story. But yeah, I'm going to go Cardiff by 8. Although it would be quite funny if they lost, but I can't see it happening. Bulls versus Scarlets. Yeah, again, it's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, I don't know how many players they've lost to South Africa, but it's still going to be pretty strong in there. And to go to South Africa is really difficult, as we all know. So I'm going to go Bulls by 15 on that one.
Okay. So that just leaves me then, and I pre-filled mine in earlier in the week because I was bored yesterday. So yeah, Ospreys, Connacht. Yeah, I think Connacht have really built a good squad over last season, and I think they finished last season really strongly. So I've got Connacht by 10. I think Dragons have started pre-season really well, James. I think people continually underestimate them, and we know what Dave Flanagan can do with a bit of time. So I've got Dragons by 5 against Edinburgh. Cardiff Benetton. I think Benetton have recruited really, really well, and I think Cardiff are just going to take a bit of time to gel. So they missed quite a chunk of what we would normally class as pre-season training, just kind of getting, who are you? Oh, you're the coach, your head coach this year. Okay, fair enough. It's just disrupted. So I've got Benetton by 10, and I was being quite optimistic by predicting Bulls by 8.
And you predicted a losing bonus point. Have you worked out the issue there?
Yeah, no, I am there. So I'm gonna adjust that to Bulls by 7 now, right? Like I say, that was yesterday. Today's day. It'll be different by tomorrow again. It'll be It'll be Scarlets by 10 tomorrow. But yeah, it's written there now.
I'll take you thinking Cardiff by 10.
So yeah, I'm going to go Bulls by 7. But yeah, it's going to be a bit of a crazy session out there. So that brings us to the end of. It's been weird this pre-season because we haven't done a proper pre-season build-up because it's been World Cup for the last 6 or 8 weeks. It feels like it's mid-season already and we're only just starting to get going. But yeah, I miss doing predictions. I really did, especially with Carwyn, because it could be fucking anywhere, couldn't it? Let's be honest. So it's quite strange to have somebody from the Ospreys predicting stuff and going, I'm going to have a think about this. It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, but with Iestyn, his predictions, they have logic. Carwyn's just like, yeah, I'm feeling positive. Ospreys by 40, Dragons by 20, full house.
God, can you imagine if he was here and we'd actually gone through to the semi-final and played New Zealand?
I'm feeling optimistic. Wales by 15.
I think we've got him. I think we've got him. Yeah, this is our year.
Yeah,
this is our time.
Wales are going to get a record defeat on the All Blacks.
Right, guys, it's been a pleasure. We finished a lot happier than we started, thankfully. So yeah, thank you for your company this evening. Thank you for you, Iestyn. So for those who particularly like Iestyn's voice or whatever, he's on the Ospreys podcast and he's on our Welsh language podcast. And what else do you do, Iestyn? Where else can people find you?
They can find me on Twitter, and sometimes I do a couple of radio shows for Pontypridd. So on GTFM, if you're from the Pontypridd area, there's the Ponty Rugby Show, and I occasionally do interviews with a Pontypridd player or coach every week.
He's a busy
boy. You're a busy boy, mate.
Yeah,
he's a busy boy. Podcasts, radio, Pontypridd match reports. So he has to
tell inside block.
In 5 years' time, we'll be sitting there going, you see him? Yeah, he was on our podcast a while ago. Yeah, he started off with us. He's only there because of us.
Wales Online next for Iestyn, I reckon. Yes, Wales Online.
Well, I remember proofreading his early blog articles.
Harley was there from the get-go. He was. I remember ages ago. I tweeted out and I was saying, anyone got any clue what to do? Because I was relatively just off my A-levels. And my phone had a ping at least twice. So I thought, someone's replied. I thought, good grief, this is exciting. Turns out it was Harley who tagged in a bunch of journalists. And I actually got several responses that night from the likes of Sam Lardner. I think Simon Thomas replied. So yeah, that was probably one of the first real thinking, oh, this might be something for me. All Harley's fault.
That's nice.
But
that's nice of him to do.
I'm telling you now, mate, right? So Scrum 5 have already nicked our three-word responses after a game. Yeah. So you're not if you end up on Scrum 5 and you start Scrum 5 with drink of the week, yeah, I'm not having it, mate. Yeah, I'm not having it. Anyway, thank you very much for tonight, gents.
Tony Rebel sponsorship.
We'll get there eventually.
That's the dream. That's the dream.
That's the dream. Right, it's been a long one tonight, gents, but it's been a pleasure. It's flown by. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll do it all again next week. All the best, gents. Good night.
That's done.
Good night.